The elements of engagements. Every type of assurance engagement will have 5 elements. These are the 3-party relationship, a subject matter, criteria, evidence, and a report. We're going to look at each of these in a bit more detail. Firstly, let's consider a 3-party relationship. As you may imagine, this means there are 3 different parties who are interacting with each other in the course of this engagement. The first we will see is the practitioner. The practitioner is the expert. They are the people providing the conclusion or the opinion on the subject matter. They will be the people writing and providing the report, and they are the, as we've said, expert in essentially the matter that is being reviewed or the information that's being provided. We then have the intended user. This is the party who are seeking or wanting confidence in the subject matter or in that information. They are going to be using that subject matter, that information, to make a decision. So they want to be able to rely on it. They are hoping to be able to trust the information that they have been given, thanks to that practitioner, that expert. And finally, we have the responsible party. This is the party who has created or provided the information or subject matter, and they are the ones who are on the other side of the interaction with the intended user. We then have the subject matter. As I've already referred to, this is the item on which a conclusion is being given, the information that has been provided. We have the criteria. This is a benchmark for us to assess the subject matter, for us to make a comparison to. This is so that we can know whether or not the subject matter is as it should be, is the simplest way to describe it. We are then thinking about evidence. Specifically, we will consider what we call sufficient appropriate evidence. So this is our evidence to support reaching a conclusion, making sure we are able to give an opinion. And finally, we have a report, and this is going to be setting out the opinion or the conclusion of the practitioner. Specifically, we will see that it is Specifically, we will see that we will have written reports when we are thinking about our assurance engagements. Let's consider this with some examples. So we have 2 examples here supporting the purchase of a house that we mentioned previously, and also our core concept of a statutory external audit. So first of all, the 3-party relationship. Can you remember who those 3 parties were? We required a practitioner, we required an intended user, and there is the responsible party. When we are thinking about a house purchase, the practitioner would be the surveyor, the person coming in to look at the house, ensure it is structurally sound, there is nothing amiss with its construction, for example. The intended user is the purchaser. They're the person looking to buy the house. They want to trust that it's not going to fall down. And then we have the seller of the house. They are the responsible party in that situation. Thinking about an external audit, the external auditor is going to be our practitioner, our expert. The company's shareholders are the users. They are the people looking to trust information that they have been provided with, and they have been provided with that information by the company directors, who are the responsible party. Thinking about what it is they are looking to get confidence in. With buying a house, you want to have confidence in the house itself, that it is, a real house, it's not going to fall down, all 4 walls, roof, everything is there. When we're thinking about a company, and specifically the external audit, it is their financial statements that is the subject matter. That is what the directors are preparing or providing information-wise, and that is what the shareholders are looking to trust in, so that they can make decisions appropriate for themselves, for example, based on the performance of the company. Then we have our criteria. So we said our criteria is what we compare the subject matter to ensure it is as it should be. So how do we know that the house has, is correct, has been built as it should have done? Well, we would need to look at the building regulations. Those would be the criteria that the surveyor would use to determine whether the house was fit for purpose, for example, that it was habitable, that it was, safe. Thinking about our external audit, the criteria we use are the financial reporting standards. So we have these rules and guidance, or the principles that we must follow when preparing financial statements. Our auditor is going to be checking that the financial statements are in line with the appropriate accounting standards, our financial reporting standards. If they're not, then the information may not have been presented correctly, for example. How do we make sure we are comfortable? How does the expert prepare to give an opinion, give their thoughts on whether the house or the financial statements are as they should be? Well, they will go out and collect evidence. So for the surveyor, there would be probably a physical inspection. They may run some surveys or do some online reviews, thinking about land surveys, for example. Whereas for an auditor, it's going to be all about the actual audit work that is done. So being on site, reviewing documents, following paper trails. These are all things that we will be meeting as we work our way through this course. And then finally, the objective of doing our audit is to provide that opinion, and that opinion is going to be given in the form of a report. Always a written report. There will be some flexibility, most likely, over the exact layout of that report when we're thinking about the surveyor, although they may have standard templates. With our statutory external audit, we will see there is a very clear structure that must be followed in order to present that opinion, that conclusion of the auditor. There are a number of different types of assurance engagement that we want to be familiar with. The key one for this paper is the external audit. Now, there is both a statutory and non-statutory external audit. A statutory external audit means it is required by law. So, for example, a large listed company has to have an external audit every single year, whereas a smaller company may still choose to have an external audit, but it is not required by law, in which case it would be referred to as a non-statutory external audit. You may have a review engagement. Now, this would be where the practitioner is reviewing information, but to a different level or providing a different level of assurance. For example, a cash flow forecast. With forecasts, we're looking into the future. For example, what sales they expect to make over the next 6 months. Now, it wouldn't be possible to give the same level of assurance over future values as you would looking at historical values in a set of financial statements, but you are still able to provide some confidence over how the information has been prepared, for example. And so in this situation, we have what we would call a review engagement. This would be similar for social or environmental reports, where we have a slightly different focus and the level of assurance or confidence that could be given would differ. We then have an attestation engagement and direct engagements. Now, these are similar, but the main difference is thinking about who is actually doing the measuring of the underlying subject matter against the criteria, so who is doing the comparison. When we have an attestation engagement, that first one, an example would be thinking in more detail about those social and environmental reports or a sustainability report. So management of the company would most likely compare the company's performance against the targets that had been set. And the practitioner, our expert, would come in to give a conclusion as to whether the measurement of those targets and evaluation of those targets has been done in a way that's free from material misstatement. Whereas with a direct engagement, we will see this looking at internal controls later on in the course. The practitioner would be the one who is going to be evaluating the performance and measurement and then giving that conclusion. So in summary, with an attestation engagement, the underlying subject matter has not been measured or evaluated by the practitioner, whereas with a direct engagement, the underlying subject matter has been evaluated by the practitioner directly. We then have internal audit. We have a specific section on internal audit within this course, and we will see how that works, the role of the auditor in internal audit and the role it plays to support external audit. Specifically, you may see things like a controls review. There is what we call a value for money audit, known as the 3 E's, looking at what we call economy, effectiveness and efficiency. And we have our compliance audit. The role of auditors and other assurance practitioners has developed significantly over time. This has generally been in response to perceived failures of auditors or assurance practitioners in providing an appropriate level of assurance. There were some high-profile corporate failures, and these have stemmed across history, and the practitioners themselves and those monitoring the practitioners have come under pressure. As a result, we have seen developments to the regulations in terms of the amount of evidence that's required, the way reporting is done, and the frequency of reporting for different entities. Some of the largest names that you may have heard are Enron back in 2001 and Lehman Brothers in 2008, both of those in the US or the United States. There have been numerous other examples across history. More recently, you may choose to have a look at Carillion and Wirecard, and these have been very high profile. There is lots of reporting on what was done and what was not done in terms of signing off or approving financial statements, saying everything was okay, when, as we later saw, things were not quite as they seemed. You do not need to know the details of any specific cases for your exam, but looking at some examples will help you to understand some of the pressures that auditors and assurance practitioners face. You will also get some real-life examples of what comes to be good examples of evidence and what is not so good.